She hated Saturday mornings. No matter how late she awoke, it was always too early, and she never knew which was worse, being asleep or being awake. Nothing had changed, except an apology now faithfully accompanied the abuse. The images of the previous night flashed fast and heavy before her mind, and her hand went instinctively to her cheek, before joining the other in a protective motion over her chest. Dissolving panic left her weak and limpid, like being forcefully torn from an isolated residence in the pit of hell, only to be buried paralyzed in a frigid tomb too vast for her existence. The heartache of reality made her fight for breath, and most Saturdays she thought it just wasn't worth it anymore. At 32, it was said she still looked in her early 20s, but she saw the oldness in her eyes, the secret dark knowledge forced upon her entwined with years of painstaking study. And at the bottom of those infinite orbs, nothing. And something. She offered the slightest smirk at her reflection in the mirror, and the eyes suddenly became steely. It was time. She retrieved an object from her husband's drawer by the bed before descending the massive double staircase, stepping gingerly onto Dante's floor. A placidness lay over the house. The atmosphere was calmer than usual, or perhaps it was the same, and it was her attitude which was changed. She did not bother with the mess in the kitchen, but bypassed it directly for the living room. The familiar scene was unchanged. The gentle taupe on the walls still mocked her. The television still glared and sensed at her presence. The glass table still stood resolute with its meager adornments and handwritten pages of notes strewn about. "My love." She bent over her husband, whispering softly in the graying light. He was awake already, probably composing his closing argument for Monday. She straightened and stepped back, allowing him room to stand. He looked at her curiously for a moment, passing his gaze over her form appreciatively. The gleam in her eye caught him, and swinging his feet to the floor, he rose with a smile. The distinct smell of stale alcohol and sleep pushed powerfully toward her, apprising her of his dominance. You're up early," he crooned, his voice soft and seductive with sleep and desire. "Did you want something?" "Yes," she smiled also. "Come." He reached for her, and in that moment the hunting knife, which had been concealed in her left hand, sunk with surprising ease to the hilt in his stomach, the velocity of their two advancing bodies combining with fatal effect. She thought giddily for a moment of a hot knife through butter, or the motion of inserting a toothpick into a cake to see if it was done. She remembered how this shameful motion had been acted out upon her time and again in the filthy dark of this unfeeling house, perpetrated by a drunken and pitiless man, and the times when she had wanted it to mean something, but somehow it didn't. She felt impassive, empty, numb, and yet entirely committed. She twisted and pulled the knife free. The blood trough relieved the suction and allowed the blade to be removed. The serrated grooves caught and mangled the flesh like ground hamburgers surrounding the incision. Blood spread over the face of his bare stomach, slowly oozing downward in a thickening stream. She watched its smooth descent, imagining she could smell the passionate scent of scarlet in the air. His face was a perverted picture of shock and flooding pain. "I forgive you," she sneered derisively. Her eyes constricted in tightening emotion. Embracing him as though he were her lover, a second stroke went into his perfectly bronzed flesh at the juncture between collarbone and neck, severing his jugular and piercing his right lung. The delicate organs offered no resistance. Crimson flowed freely in torrents from the wound, soaking her pale yellow top. She released him, and he dropped to the floor with a deadened thud, wheezing for breath. His chest heaved violently with the effort to intake air. He coughed as blood oozed in a trickle from his mouth. Reaching out feebly for her help, she was immediately upon him, laughing maniacally as he struggled in vain against the fight for his life. She pressed at the edges of the wound in his stomach, blood gushing forth as a fresh wave of pain twisted through his body. She smeared the blood over his well-defined chest, with his heart pounding frenetically, before wiping the substance off in disgust on his pants. The pristine white carpet surrounding them was irrevocably soiled with his blood, and she felt its delicate texture stab her palms as she sought an untainted patch on either side of his head. Leaning forward, she brushed over his bluing lips before murmuring sardonically in his ear, "Don't you just hate Saturday mornings?"